Welcome to our channel. In today's video, we're recapping an intense movie that explores the chaos and conflict in a fractured America. Follow the journey of Lee Smith, a dedicated war photographer, as she navigates through danger and captures the raw realities of a nation at war. Stay tuned for a gripping story of bravery, conflict, and survival. The movie starts with the president addressing a press conference, summoning the courage to announce that victory is closer than ever. He reflects on the chaos caused by his actions. Trying to hide his unease, he boasts about dealing a significant blow to Western forces, with some claiming it to be the greatest victory in human history. The scene then shifts to Lee Smith, a war photographer, listening to the president declaring a warning for Texas and California to dispose of their secessionist government and to bring them back into the Union. He adds that the Florida Alliance has failed to persuade the brave Carolinians to join their resistance, but promises a historic victory over the rebels soon. The next day, Lee and her colleague Joe arrive at the site of a riot. As the clash between the public and police escalates, Lee fearlessly snaps photos, oblivious to her surroundings. During the chaos, another young war photographer, Jessie Collins, gets hit in the face. Seeing Jessie in pain, Lee rushes to her and offers her Kevlar vest. Jessie is shocked to see Lee, and as Lee advises her to be careful, they both hear the roar of an approaching helicopter. It drops a bomb, and Lee shields Jessie from the explosion that claims many lives. Jessie regains her composure and notices Lee walking through the chaos, capturing images of the dead. In the evening, Lee, Joe, and their friend Sammy are at a hotel. Joe predicts the Western forces will topple the president in Washington, D.C. by June 4th, but Sammy argues that the Western forces and the Florida Alliance will turn on each other afterward. When Sammy asks about their plans, he is shocked to learn that Lee and Joe are heading to D.C. He calls it a suicide mission, but Joe is optimistic, saying the president hasn't been interviewed in over 14 months. Their interview could be the last report on him. Though scared, Sammy provides them with the safest route, admitting he had considered it himself. Lee and Joe look worried after hearing this, but Sammy clarifies that he wants to go to the front line in Charlottesville. Lee and Joe don't like the idea of dragging an old man with them, so Lee excuses herself and leaves. As she heads to the elevator, she finds out she'll have to take the stairs to her room on the 10th floor. On her way to the stairs, Jessie shows up wanting to return her jacket. Lee, knowing Jessie's real intentions, seems unhappy when Jessie claims to be a war photographer. Jessie says Lee is her hero, just like Lee Miller, and notes that they share the same name. Lee brushes her off, saying she has to take the stairs to her room. After Lee leaves, Jessie curiously heads toward the other journalists. Later, Jessie zones out in her bathtub, flashing back to the brutal injuries and murders she witnessed. She remembers taking photos of people with hope in their eyes until their last breath, unable to help them. The next morning, Lee heads to her car and finds Jessie inside. She talks to Joe about it, and he reminds her that she allowed an old man to tag along. He also points out that Lee herself was young when she started war photography, and that everyone needs a starting point. Lee agrees to let Jessie come on one condition: she must stop at Charlottesville. They continue their journey and stop at a fuel pump, where they encounter 3 armed men. Joe tries to negotiate to let them fuel up, but the men refuse. Lee steps up and strikes a deal for a full tank and 2 gallons of fuel in exchange for $300 Canadian dollars. While the car is fueling, Jessie steps out and heads toward 2 men hanging inside the garage. As she gets closer, Lee sees a man chasing her and rushes to join her. The man starts scaring Jessie with stories about what they've been doing with the hanging men. Seeing Jessie in shock, Lee steps forward and distracts the man by asking him to stand between the hanging men so she can take his picture. Inside the car, Jessie complains about forgetting to strap her cameras on, but Lee snaps at her, warning that it's minor compared to what they're heading into. Sammy calms Lee down, but when she blames Joe for letting Jessie join, Jessie starts crying and promises not to make the same mistake again. Later, they stop, and Lee orders Jessie to take pictures of a destroyed helicopter. Lee notices Jessie's cameras and learns they belong to her father, who's on a farm in Missouri pretending there's no war. Jessie asks why Lee is mad at her, and Lee tells her that joining this mission is a huge mistake. Jessie insists it's her decision, but Lee warns her she won't be able to help if she gets hurt or killed. That night, Lee sits with Sammy and shares that she hoped her photos would warn people to stop the war, yet here they are still in the middle of it. Sammy asks why she's so worried about Jessie when she started younger than Jessie is now. Lee doesn't have a clear answer. Joe joins them, pointing out the sound of gunfire. Lee agrees to check out the site if the gunfire continues until sunrise. Joe updates Jessie on the situation, advising her to stay put. Jessie refuses, and Joe jokes about not sleeping from excitement, telling her to wake him if she gets scared. In the morning, Lee and her friends are with WF soldiers fighting the American military. Jessie captures everything with her camera. The WF soldiers gain the upper hand, capturing 3 American soldiers. Jessie takes photos as they are lined up and executed, capturing the gruesome scene. Later, they arrive at a camp about 465 kilometers from DC. They are shown where to park and where the canteen is for food. Jessie is alone when Lee approaches with food, and they talk. Jessie asks how Lee started in photojournalism, and Lee laughs, saying Jessie must know about her heroes. Jessie then talks about becoming the youngest photojournalist. With some time on their hands, she asks Lee about her parents. Lee shares that they're in Colorado pretending the war isn't happening, just like Jessie's parents in Missouri. They spend the night at the camp, and in the morning, they leave and reach a town that seems full of life and peace. Joe jokes that it feels like they've crossed a time portal. They stop at a boutique, and Joe asks the owner how the people in town can seem so unaffected by the war raging across America. The woman replies that they try to stay out of it because the news is too grim. Jessie picks out a dress for Lee and encourages her to try it on. When Lee does, Jessie compliments her, making Lee blush and takes her picture. Their conversation is interrupted by Joe, who asks to take a photo, but Jessie refuses. Lee then returns to Sammy, who is pleased to see Jessie has bought her a purse. When Lee comments on how normal the place seems, Sammy points out the armed men on the rooftops, showing that war isn't far away. They leave the town, but soon stop when they see a dead body in the road. Lee uses her camera to scan the area but sees no movement. As Joe drives forward, a sniper's bullet forces them to take cover. Joe, Lee, and Jessie get out of the car, and Joe spots 2 snipers. He approaches them, introduces himself, and asks who they're fighting for. The soldier replies that they're just trying to survive by killing those who want to kill them. After the snipers take down their target, Lee lies on the ground and falls asleep. Later, they leave the place, and Joe sleeps while Lee drives. Sammy advises Jessie to rest as well. As Jessie falls asleep, Lee notices a car tailing them and asks Sammy for advice. Sammy suggests slowing down since they can't outrun the car. Lee slows down, waking Joe, who gets excited when he sees that the people in the other car are his friends Tony and Bohai. Joe lies, saying he didn't tell Tony about their trip to DC, but he gets caught when Lee confirms with Tony that Joe spilled the beans while drunk. Tony, claiming he's tired of Bohai, makes a daring switch to their car. Jessie can't resist and switches too, leaving Bohai to drive away. Soon, Bohai's car is out of Lee's sight, and she panics, worried about Jessie. She narrowly avoids hitting a military vehicle, gets the car back on the road, and they enter the next town, only to find Bohai's car parked with no one inside. Lee uses her camera and spots Jessie and Bohai being led toward a truck full of dead bodies by 2 soldiers. Lee wants to approach the soldiers to clear up the misunderstanding, but Sammy warns her that the soldiers don't want any witnesses. Despite this, Lee insists on saving Jessie and Bohai, with Joe and Tony joining her and asking Sammy to stay behind. They confront the soldiers just as they're about to kill Jessie and Bohai. Joe tries to reason with them, saying they're Americans, but it's no use. As the soldiers get distracted trying to stop the convoy, Lee tells her friends that the president is still inside and rushes in with them, avoiding attention. Inside the building, they find it eerily empty. Just when they think the place is deserted, soldiers arrive and order them to stay out of the way. The soldiers then encounter a woman who tries to negotiate the president's surrender. She presents the soldiers with conditions, but they shoot her without hesitation. As they continue searching for the president, the soldiers order Lee and her friends to stay behind. Suddenly, another group of guards ambushes them. While the WF soldiers are busy reloading, Jessie steps out to take pictures, unintentionally making herself a target. Just as she's about to get shot, Lee pushes her down and shields Jessie from the incoming bullets. Jessie accidentally captures photos of Lee in her final moments and is horrified by what she has done. Shaken to her core, Jessie leaves Lee's body in a state of confusion and shock. Later, the soldiers locate the president and are about to execute him when Joe arrives and stops them. He asks the president for a final quote and is met with a desperate plea, "Don't let them kill me." As soon as the words leave his mouth, the WF soldiers ruthlessly shoot him. And that's the recap of this gripping and intense movie. If you enjoyed this breakdown, please make sure to subscribe to our channel for more exciting movie recaps. Don't forget to smash the like button, turn on the notification bell to stay updated with our latest videos, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.